Hello, everybody, and welcome to No Laughing Matter with me, Jaya Baldwin.
And me, Ned Sanders, and our guest.
Hello, my name is Jai Barry, and I'm joining the beautiful Ned Sanders and beautiful Jaya on their comedy show today.
And we're here with Jaya, and this is Guy. How many times can we say each other's names? This is fun.
About many over the course of an entire hour. This is the Name Your Name show. Hello, welcome to No Laughing Matter, and today we are going to open up with one of our favourite games. Isn't that interesting?
Sorry, actually, it's isn't that interesting? I don't accept it unless you do the.
Apologies. There's an exclamation in the title. It's a critical that is there. I will be flagellated for it later.
The reason we're starting with this is because this is quite a fun and silly game, and we're going to be talking about some not particularly intense, but some more heavy and darker stuff than we have previously on the show. So without further ado, let's get all the fun out the way so we can get to the nice, juicy, depressing stuff.
You're filled with intrigue, but first you must fight the facts.
Would you like to go first, Jack?
Why not? My fact today is, if you hold a kangaroo's tail sort of in your hands or just above the ground, then it cannot jump anymore.
Oh my gosh. That is interesting. If I'm ever in the Australian outback and I need to subdue a kangaroo,
I'm mostly wondering how Jai knows that. That's...
I'm going to guess experience.
Well, I have a lot of animal facts, you see. I'm a big animal lover ever since I've been a kid. It's the reason I'm a vegetarian, actually, because I've never liked the idea of animals being animals being killed or anything like that. And so
why are you telling people about this easy way to subdue a kangaroo?
It is literally a video game-esque weak point. But it's an interesting fact, I think. There's lots of fun facts.
You have to make the
animals.
kangaroo charge at you so it hits its head, and then you go round it whilst it's confused, and you get to its weak point, which is its tail.
It's stunned for a consistent 3 seconds per attack, and then come on, we've had enough of this. What's your fact, Ned?
My fact is, oh no, this is fine. I thought it was statistics, but it's not. My fact is, in your lifetime, you salivate enough and produce enough saliva to fill 2 swimming pools. It wasn't specified how big those swimming pools are, if they're like Olympic diving ones, or if they're like kind of paddling pools, or I don't know what the deal was. But either way, that's a lot of saliva.
I see. So my childhood fact, was based on the fact that I loved animals as a kid. So did you just love saliva as a kid?
Oh, yeah. No, it wasn't saliva, it was specifically pools of saliva.
Ah.
Isn't it also affected by how many times you're trapped up in the mountains and imagine your friend as a roast turkey leg, how much you salivate? Doesn't that affect?
Yeah. Yeah, when you're starving and you see their head as a giant burger. Oh, Jesus.
Young Ned just was in a swimming pool thinking, I know how I can improve this. Anyway, Guy, our guest star of the hour.
Intrigue us.
What is your fact?
I have a couple of facts, if you'd like to hear a couple of different facts.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it seems that every single guest who's come on the show so far has upstaged us in the isn't that interesting? So why, you continue the tradition, I suppose.
One fact is that black holes, when they're formed, make a noise that is like a high-pitched blip. And that's it. They just go blip, and then a black hole exists.
Have you heard this noise?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
If you look it up on the internet, you can hear a black hole.
Well, okay, anyone who's listening to this, stop immediately, turn off the radio and go look that up, because that's infinitely more interesting than what we're talking about.
This is why NASA get funded, is to hear the sounds of black hole blips. Blip.
Blip, that's amazing.
Well, there you go.
What about your second fact?
My second fact is that camels... inside of their mouths have a load of rubbery, tissuey fingers that they use to push the food down their throats.
What?
They have rubbery fingers on the inside of their gums and lips.
Sorry, I'm not unimpressed. I'm just
down.
At a loss for words.
Sort of like tonsils.
No, they're they are like
muscles. They actually have muscles.
When you just step out of a bath and you have those things for rubbing in between your toes.
Oh, like those.
They're like those, and they're inside the mouth, and they push the food down the throat.
Fascinating.
Oh my God, that is quite something. Is that giraffes, you say?
That's camels.
Camels, right, camels. Wow, they're fascinating creatures.
That's brilliant. All right, Ned, before we move on to the next song, would you like to intro the topic of this week then?
Yes, yeah, now that we've
With the
got the
gravitas it deserves.
happiness out of the way, we're going to be talking about pain in comedy and this idea that depression and anxiety and pain is inherent in funniness and in humour, and whether the stereotypes of the kind of tortured soul comedian is a positive thing or a negative thing. And just generally all that kind of that kind of stuff, like Robin Williams and the comedian suicides. So you're in for a real fun hour. It's going to be a blast.
So, in theme with what's been going on, we're now going to leave you with a surprisingly cheery song. This is "Shake It Out" by Florence and the Machine. Enjoy. Hello,
hello.
You were just listening to Mac the Knife, covered by Louis Armstrong.
That's a classic and a half.
It really is gorgeous. Unlike what we're talking about today.
Yes. We've for those who have just tuned in, we've been, and as a fact, we're going to talk about comedy and pain and depression in comedy and these ideas that surround comedy. And one thing I'm really interested in is the relationship between comedy and pain, because on one hand, you have the school of thought which says, look at the amount of comedians who have dealt with depression, and look at the amount of comedians such as Robin Williams who have killed themselves. And it's difficult to... I just sniggers at me.
No, I'm not sniggering at the concept of suicide. It was just the way it was so delivered so offhand. I don't know. Continue.
Okay. You could say that one would be silly to say that there isn't a link between pain and comedy. But on the other hand, one could also think, and I think quite rightly so, that many comedians cling on to the tortured poet, deep suffering turmoil image in order to appear more interesting than they are. I'm not talking about people who have suffer from genuine problems or mental issues. I mean people who are insensitively using and romanticizing those to live up to the stereotype that they're trying to portray. Guy, as you're our guest, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you want to comment on that at all?
I've only sort of started comedy this year, and I don't know as many comedians as I would like to. In my personal experience of myself, as a person, I can only say that I have developed into doing comedy through sort of two different influences. One was that I have a very funny family, so there was always a lot of, not intentional pressure, not negative pressure, but just natural pressure to be funny. Everyone was making jokes and everyone's trying to one-up each other and make each other laugh.
Yeah.
But then my other influence was my physical illness and my mental illness, through which my comedy developed as a kind of like a support, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you could call it, if you want, a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it was a coping mechanism. Yeah, okay. Definitely. When I was ill a lot of the time, when you are consistently chronically ill, it causes a lot of stress and suffering, not just for you, but for the people around you. And you carry a lot of guilt with you as well about it, because you're causing other people stress and upset. And one of the ways that I've tried to deal with it is making light of it, making jokes, trying to make people laugh. When you're in hospital for hours and hours overnight, you have to try and make the people around you who are with you laugh and make them happy.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the really beautiful things about comedy is that rather than making light of things in a way which diminishes them, you make light of things in a way which makes them less scary.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's a way of dealing. I think it is a way of dealing with pain and with depression. Several of my family members have depression. They're all very funny people. Whether or not those two things are related, I don't know.
That's what we're here to find out today.
Exactly. A lot of the comedians that I'm a fan of and have been a fan of, the ones that I really relate to, have all in their lives had a lot of hardship and have suffered from mental illness, etc., and have developed comedy through hardship. I think it really depends on where you... And also, I guess you've got to look at successful comedians and comedians who are not publicly successful? Because is there a mix in publicly successful comedians of not only pain and suffering having made them funny, but pain and suffering giving them the drive to become publicly successful?
Yeah, and that's very interesting. Me and a brilliant person you'll know, Sam Barker, went to a gig in London a few weeks ago, and all of the comedians who came on, it was an open mic gig, so it was amateur comedians, and all the comedians that came on, I would say about 80% of them at some point made not self-deprecating jokes, but would make light of how screwed up they were internally and stuff. And that's the other side of this, which I think I also want to talk about, which is, when does it become a romanticization? When does the idea of the comedian who, goes on stage and makes people laugh, but then backstage he's he's drinking whiskey from the bottle and crying. When does that become a problematic, romanticized image?
Well, I think that the difference is between those comedians that put forward that image. They put forward that image of, I'm going to go out back behind the stage and just drink my sorrows away after this, and do that as a stunt. And those that put that out, maybe not intentionally or genuinely, as you said, sort of 80% of people were making self-deprecating or in some way self-referential jokes.
Well, self-deprecating is implying that you're putting yourself down, but I think these people were making themselves seem what they considered cool and interesting by means of quote-unquote self-deprecation.
But then isn't there that thing of, don't comedians need to be self-deprecating? Because to have the audience on your side, you can't come in too arrogant. I mean, people like Ricky Gervais get away with it, but you can't, at a low stage, I don't think you can come in too arrogant and too full of yourself, because to go up on stage and make jokes and assume that you'll get laughs is in itself an arront thing,
yes,
really.
Yeah, and I think that you need to assume a low status generally, and I think lots of comedians do that fantastically. But the reason I say self-deprecating in inverted commas is because I think in many situations that they're not actually being self-deprecating. Yeah. They're saying, "Oh, it's really bad because I'm this cool, tortured poet," which isn't self-deprecating. They're romanticizing that. That's what they want to be seen as.
I'm interested to hear some elaboration on quite what you mean by making themselves seem more interesting, which is what we will pick back up on. But for now, we are going to leave you with Ghosts and Stuff by Deadmau5, or as I'd like to say, Deadmau5. Feet, my favourite word, Rob Swire. Here you go.
Featuring feet, isn't it?
Hello, everybody. That was Ghosts and Stuff by Deadmau5. Feet, Rob Swire. And we all enjoyed that a lot, didn't we?
Yeah.
So, yes, Ned was just saying last time that he thinks comedians are sort of using a stereotypical image.
Well, some comedians.
Yes, some comedians, obviously.
He was talking about me, obviously.
Specifically Jaya.
Some comedians are trying to use an image of an intensely depressed sort of stereotype to try and make themselves seem more interesting. I assume you mean in a kind of, ooh, so deep and edgy sort of way.
Well, it's, there is a comedian who I love, who is fantastic, and his name is Doug Stanhope. Have any of you heard of this man?
I've heard of the name.
Yeah, Doug Stanhope is very, very good, and he is allegedly, obviously I'm not going to say, I don't think he really is, because that's not something which I wish to accuse anyone of. That's completely his own private business. Well, private, I say that. But he is allegedly an alcoholic and a manic depressive, and he uses this all as part of his onstage persona. But the way that he does it makes him come off as, and it's very clear that he's doing it intentionally, this really cool, tragic, Byronic, dark, cool figure, this tortured poet with all this inner turmoil, and he uses it as part of his act. And whilst I think he's a very talented person, I find that slightly worrying and disingenuous and problematic.
Do you think he's presenting it as a character, or do you think he's presenting
No,
that?
he does it as himself, and he's done personal appearances as himself on radio shows and interviews where he keeps that alive and he keeps that, and it's something which I think he definitely considers a part of himself. I mean, we'd have to probably talk to him and interview him if we wanted to find out more about it.
Yes.
But that's the impression I get.
So you're talking about the difference between sort of heroicising illness and problems with your life rather than talking about them and discussing them in a healthy way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the if you take the traditional unhealthy, cool stereotype of the person with depression, or the kind of depressed comedian, that's someone who's not doing anything to help themselves. That's someone who constantly, drinks and takes drugs and is nihilistic and doesn't try and make changes to themselves. And Doug Stanhope constantly makes jokes about how he's, has no intention of getting better or changing. And
Do you think there's... Sorry to interrupt.
no, you go ahead.
Do you think that there is a belief that, to a degree, to get really famous, you have to conform to some type of idea of what comedians are?
See, I would say no, just because if you look at the breadth of professional comedians that are out there at the moment that are getting media attention and sort of television coverage, there's quite a wide variety.
Well, in personality type,
In-
at least.
Yes, I'm not talking about content or anything like that. We're
No,
not-
I meant more with race and gender and stuff.
Right. Yes. Yes, I'm specifically talking about, the visual, not the visual, the presented characters on stage.
Yeah. Personality types.
And there is quite a wide variety. For example, Michael McIntyre doesn't really in any way embody this sort of overly sad or troubled image, and even
No, not
people
at
that
all.
some people consider on the opposite end of the spectrum, the sort of even Frankie Boyle doesn't necessarily or really kind of present that. I'm not sure it's as prevalent a thing in modern comedians as it used to be, but
Are we talking about just English comedians, or are we talking about American comedians as well?
I suppose technically at the moment I am speaking just about British comedians, although by all means include American comedians in the
I
discussion.
was referring generally to comedians, but the most specific moments that I've seen this, and where I see this being really prevalent, is in amateur comedy, in London specifically,
Yes, I imagine
or in the UK.
but surely it's a sign that you're only seeing in amateur comedy that it isn't good. I mean, that it doesn't work.
Well, I suppose it's one of those things that other comedians, when you go to these gigs when you've got mostly comedians in the audience, they love it and they eat it up. I mean, that gig that I went to with Sam, it at least, like I say, 80% of the audience, of the performers, all at one point made a joke about being mistreated or neglected by their father, because that is a common romanticized trope, the idea of the comedian having daddy issues.
Yes, but how many of those were played off in a sort of fun way, as in ha ha ha, oh I had daddy issues, sort of in a kind of not overly pity-seeking way, and how many of them were like making jokes but then also like, oh no, but seriously, my father beat me, sort of thing.
Okay, well, yeah, in the majority of cases they were playing it off lightly. I mean, I just think it's interesting and something that as comedians we should probably keep an eye out on, the growing rate at which this is becoming a trend to romanticize quite serious issues.
I suppose so. So you would almost object to the fact that people are making light of troublesome issues?
No, actually, I mean...
Because that's what comedy does.
No.
widely to a
I mean,
degree.
that's what I love. It's the fact that people aren't making light of it. The fact that that people would like to be seen as this person who uses comedy to make light of all of their terrible issues. People actually making light of the issues they have, that's fine.
So wearing other people's issues like an accessory.
Yes.
I see. Yes, that is obviously problematic in almost any environment you find it.
That is very hard to tell, though, if people genuinely do have problems, and they feel because of the way that they have been brought up and the way that they have lived, that the only way they can talk about and express it is through comedy, to try and reach out and to find other people with the same issues as them, to find groups. Or if it's wearing it, as a fashion thing, so to speak, comedic fashion. Isn't that all about also your perception of their jokes and the way that they tell their jokes? So, for example, when I go up on stage, I've been told that I come across as quite arrogant, but I try to do that on purpose.
Yeah. We did a whole episode on Persona where we, I sort of defended arrogance on stage when as something that's part of a character.
Yeah.
Well, then it's quite important that we differentiate between a piece of character comedy using issues like that, and a piece of non-character comedy doing things like that, which is an interesting topic to pick up at the end of this song, which is Just by Radiohead, spelled as one word. So here you go. This is Just by Radiohead. We'll see you on the other side. Hello, and that was Just by Radiohead.
For regular listeners of the show, you may notice that I have a bit of a thing for Radiohead. I do love them dearly.
Please don't tell them. He keeps it a secret. He's waiting for them to notice him.
I have all of the band's hair in a scrapbook, sellotaped to one page. It's a pride and joy of mine.
Anyway, I believe the wonderful guy had a point that he wanted to make.
Yes.
Yep. We've been having a little discussion. This is the behind the scenes. While the music playing, sometimes we have a little bit of a discussion.
You need to give the illusion this is all spontaneous.
And we were talking about whether or not the striving to become a comedian can exacerbate or cause mental health difficulties, and also, the type of people that look for comedy. Why do people become comedians? Like desire for attention, affection. Is there loneliness and isolation in their life? A lot of the comedians that I like have experienced that, and they go into comedy as a way to escape things in their lives and to fulfill an emptiness inside of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have, because comedy's quite, just to let you guys know, comedy's quite tough. It's quite
It's very difficult getting up on a stage and having lots of people listen to you and then tell you how great you are. It's
exactly,
really tough.
It's awful.
They don't do that all the time now.
No.
Come
Oh,
on.
no, they
No.
really
Come on.
don't. Sorry, I was just being self-deprecating.
Yeah, it's that constant rejection and a sort of striving for something that there's so very few jobs and so many people who want to do it.
Yeah.
It can be quite disheartening. A lot of people, don't necessarily believe in you.
And I suppose the mixture of that and the kind of person who wants to be a comedian, if you want to be a comedian, generally you're the kind of person who has something to prove. You want to get on a stage and you want to prove that you're worth listening to. And that sort of person with that mindset, what I'm thinking is, how healthy is it for that person to go through the trials and tribulations of the comedy world, where they'll get beaten down and rejected over and over again? For that kind of mindset,
But
how healthy is that?
But the thing is, the only way, in theory, to maintain a healthy... I mean, if someone requires the validation of others in order to stay mentally healthy, then that's they have to risk not being validated at the same time.
Yeah, of course.
You have to make some sort of impact rather than no sort of impact.
I'm not saying that there's that they should change this.
No, I'm not.
Just...
I'm not suggesting that you are, but it's an interesting sort of dichotomy. I think it's an inherent risk with the thing. Sorry, that was a terrible description. With the
thing.
With the art form of stand-up comedy.
Comedy, I have some friends who are in comics, not comedian, in comics, so to speak, who are in the comic industry, making comics. And I think it's a very similar process in that you're constantly putting forward work that only you have judged or been judged by your peers who are your friends, hoping that it will be accepted and being rejected constantly. And I think it becomes, what I've seen from that is it's a survival of the fittest. It's a mixture of luck and those who can stay in the game long enough to get work,
and if
rather
you can't
than those.
stay in the game, I mean, it's sad, but it's a pretty awful situation to be in.
And it's also, I think you've got to be friendly. If you can make friends and you can get along with people, you can get places.
Yeah, I've noticed how many comedians generally have a bit of an inherent fear and hatred of other comedians. I suppose it's because it's a competitive environment. A lot of comedians are very quick to judge other comedians or to not want to get on with other comedians. There's lots of spite that goes around, which I think is a shame.
You can easily imagine that sort of in the average group of friends or group of companions, that there's probably only one comedian. It's unlikely that in the same sort of friendship group there's going to be an excess of comedians. And I could imagine that when first becoming a comedian, there's that initial sort of incubation of your peers just generally being impressed by the fact that you want to do stand-up comedy or that you are a stand-up comedian. And so when you go into the, in inverted commas, real world, where there's lots more stand-up comics, and you expose yourself, then it's almost like when you leave school, it's like, oh, you know, it's not only me, there are lots of other people that also do this, and maybe they're better than me.
Yeah, it's it is a weird and scary world, and there is no hope for all of us, and the Grim Reaper will one day claim us, everyone.
As usual, we've ended up back in that wonderful nihilistic spot.
Shall we go on to our game?
Right after a point that Jaya made. So, yes, it's time for our game. Everyone's favourite. It's terrible jokes
with
for terrible people.
Is it with or for? I don't know.
It's both.
Okay.
Simultaneously.
It only works when we both say the title.
Either side of the table is a different universe. Anyway, yes, in this game, we will be giving each other a topic to write stand-up comedy about over the course of the next song. And then we'll have to perform whatever hideous results are left to you, the unfortunate listeners.
Yes, so Jai, do you want to start by giving me a
my thing for you, Ned, is furniture.
Furniture, okay. Guy, I'm going to give you the topic of phones.
Phones, good. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Sending you the mental link. My topic for Jaya is people who look like their pets.
People who look like their pets.
Wow.
Right. Okay.
That's a great one. It's rather than every other topic that has been chosen on this show. It's not something that's within eyeshot in this room. We go, ceilings.
Hip hop is not visible within this room.
Yeah, but
that was from a past episode.
It is in spirit, though.
Right,
Yeah.
we need to get writing these jokes, and you need to get actually listening to quality content. So here you go. This is I'd Do Anything for Love,
Brackets.
but I Won't Do That,
Close brackets.
by Meatloaf, feat Nobody Else. Do that. Hello, and welcome back to No Laughing Matter. You were listening to I Do Anything for Love, open brackets, but I Won't Do That, close brackets, by Meatloaf, feat Nobody Else. So, it's time. The terrible jokes have been written, and it's time for the terrible people to tell them to you, the wonderful audience. So, are either of you two...
All two of you.
Are either of you two brave enough to be first?
Do you want to go first, Guy?
I don't mind going first. I've written a couple of things. The first time, my item was phones. Every time you write a love letter in text form, then hesitate before you send it. You break a phone's heart, because for a brief moment your phone thought it was for them.
Oh my god!
Oh my!
And my second one...
heartbreaking.
My second one was Alexander Graham Bell ultimately failed in his creation of the telephone because his actual goal was to invent the Spider-Man walkie-talkie.
Wow.
This annoys me so much because I consistently resort to terrible puns because I can't actually come up with material on this segment, and our guests just come in and do actually good material.
Well, I've stopped writing origin stories about things this time. This is just some bad stuff. Right, here we go. I had to write about people that look like their pets. And this is just some very genuine sentiments. I've never thought a person to look like their pet, which is why I struggled to write this. But if they did, I'm sure I would find it absolutely terrifying. I mean, just imagine that you tap a person on the shoulder to ask them a question, and they turn around to reveal a completely furry face, or worse, a reptilian one. The conspiracy theorists would surely have a field day. How would these people... What I worry, though, is how would these people get by in society? They'd be taken away by scientists and hidden from the world. And even more confusing is what on earth would their pets think? you look like them, but you presumably have a human body, creating some sort of horrific hybrid creature that represents the worst of both worlds. So just think next time about the implications when you're telling someone that they look like their pet, because you could be tearing apart multiple lives.
That's brilliant. I like that a lot.
And also questioning the birth parents of that pet.
Yes.
You would.
It's terrible. It's really not finished. It's in note form. But
I'm already unimpressed.
okay. Okay, I had furniture, and I have, as you can see, resorted again to puns. So prepare to be lampooned by the chairman of the Furniture Pun Society. Dear furniture pun enthusiasts, or should I say furniture pun fans? Does a fan count as an item of furniture? I don't know, doesn't matter. Sofa, I can't think of any. Sink isn't a. I can't think of any furniture
Tell your
puns.
joke, man.
But I'm sure with a stable relationship with, and then I stopped writing. But as you can see, there's some really solid basis for some good material.
I enjoy how much you emphasised each furniture word on the assumption that we'd be
in all caps on my phone.
On the assumption we'd be too thick to get it ourselves.
Yeah, no, that is. I was actually because I thought I was too thick. That otherwise I'd just read over without noticing.
Oh bless. Well, there we go. Those were our terrible. I've gone into a funny accent. Those are our terrible jokes.
Terrible people. Well, thank you, Mr. Guy Barry. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's my pleasure, Ned. I'm glad to see that I got payment in those puns there. It makes it worth coming on.
And we have been No Laughing Matter, and this is about the end of our segment. We hope you've enjoyed everything, and we're now going to leave you.
Of course you've enjoyed everything.
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 Not a single thing has been left unenjoyed.
And I hope
Mainly the suffering.
I hope you've not been upset by any of the slightly sad or upsetting topics we've talked about.
If you have been thinking about becoming a comedian, please contact Jaya and Ned to be put forward to the helpline. There are people night and day who can talk you down from the idea of becoming a comedian.
The worst thing is, because I want to be, I'm going to be president of Comedy Society next year, and I've been saying to Dan, I want a real emphasis on inviting new people in to the society, and I've just literally gone on a show and stated all of the reasons why people shouldn't be comedians, because it's a terrible life.
Comedy causes death. Just a heads up.
If you would like to come and see any of our comedy, we're all performing tonight at the
Monkey's
Forehead
about an hour.
From 7 o'clock onwards. If you'd like to see the truth behind the lies, I'm not sure. If you'd like to see what we do. Anyway, thank you very much for listening. This is Daddy Cool by Boney M. Full Stop.